Hello and good morning. I hope this finds you well wherever you are. Today we'll be resuming our talks on Thus Spake Zarathustra as it relates to Nietzsche's The Gay Science. And here I wanted to start by reading what is arguably one of Nietzsche's most famous aphorisms, and that is number 341 from from The Gay Science, which is the greatest weight. Sometimes I say it as the heaviest burden, but he means it supposedly it's a translation as pertains to a prize fighter, right? Like a heavyweight. 341, the greatest weight. What if some day or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live it once more and innumerable times more, and there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you. So, right, already in the thought experiment, already in the posing of the idea, he's saying nothing will change. There's no ideal world, there's no better world, there's no changing the past, no changing the present, therefore no changing the future, right? He's stripping you bare. He's stripping you down to your absolute bare bones nakedness. Are you okay with yourself? Right? Are you actually okay with yourself? Are you happy with who and what you are? Because if you're honest about the truth and the future, where the hell does anyone ever go? They go where their fate in life kind of dictates, don't they, right? There's a drivenness there. And I've said it before, artists hang out with artists, cops hang out with cops, nurses hang out with nurses, right? Everyone has their own circle. So the idea that there's something like, you could say, I guess, modern mythology, there's ideas of class mobility, or becoming a hero or doing this and that. Like there's these old mythologies and narratives, which by the fact that people still live their lives by some sort of narrative structure in their head, both in conceiving of the past and their relation to the present and therefore the future. But to keep going here, he's saying everything will happen again, all in the same succession and sequence, even this spider in this moonlight, even this book in this reading, between the trees and even this moment and I myself. The eternal hourglass of existence is turned upside down again and again and again, and you with it, speck of dust, right? Like you're not going to change the past and you're not going to change the future. Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? If this thought gained possession of you, it would change you as you are, or perhaps crush you. The question in each and every thing, do you desire this once more and innumerable times more? Right? Could you accept it over and over and over again? That question would lie upon your action as the greatest weight, or how well disposed you would have to become to yourself and to life to crave nothing more fervently than the ultimate than this ultimate eternal confirmation and seal. Meaning again, what gives you joy and in life isn't the ideal tomorrow you're working towards. It's here as you are now. Now with this, it's not just a question of moving forward or dealing with the present. It's a question of the past. Because the idea is if the past determined the present and the present determines the future, well, there's actually no changing your past, therefore no changing your present, therefore no changing your future. So the greatest weight isn't just a question of what the future holds and repeating today, therefore yesterday over and over again. It's realizing that, hey, all those mistakes you made, those weren't mistakes. That was your life. That was real. Only in your head can you theorize, like, let's say in something like psychoanalysis, that something happened wrong. I'm not saying life isn't traumatic and people don't have mental problems. I'm saying that very much so, it's that those things are real and they're the realest thing in the world. I was thinking about this, how I related yesterday's topic, the happy isles, and I mentioned the 5 stages of grief. And it's funny because that very proposition that there's 5 stages to it, and as if they exist adjacent to or attached to something rather than being primary factors in life. Like if someone loses a child, or if someone loses their future by way of something, losing some sort of fortune or having bodily harm in the present, right? Like someone gets sick. an athlete breaks a leg, a soldier loses an arm, an artist mangles their fingers, right? An artist goes blind. There's so many ways we could look at how life carries frustration as its primary vehicle, arguably part and parcel to the drivenness, because that's what Nietzsche says. I think it's going to be in what we read shortly. He mentions that because the alternative is to not will. It's almost like a Buddhistic quietus, right? It's seeking a detachment, but that is a seeking to end the will. It's a form of suicide, more or less. It's a form of degeneration. It's no longer actively willing and creating in the world. You could argue that's less conflict, but that's the idea. There's no escaping the conflict within oneself, without oneself, and you'd be fooling yourself to think otherwise. So the greatest weight isn't just repeating the present over and over again to make the inevitable future. It's recognizing that there's no changing the past, there's no simply getting over it. You must contend with it. And then from there, I would say that the issues of old world models, including everything pertains to psychoanalysis, these things can be bridges to the future, but at the same time, as a primary mode of life or thing to think about, it just becomes a sort of navel gazing, a self-obsession, more, narcissistic product from a narcissistic culture. And then, by the way, I think the word narcissist is swung around so much as to mean nothing, right? And I think it's also generally misunderstood phenomenon. You have intelligent people, and intelligent people generally are trying to figure out, it's kind of what I talked about with intellectuals in power. They're figuring out how to change systems, how to change people, how to turn things in their favor. They're figuring out how to wield power, just like everyone else in the world is always trying to wield power. Animals don't want to grow weaker and extinct. They generally want to grow stronger. They want to expand. They want to procreate, right? They want to mark their territory and guard their territory lines, right? Humans are no different with their boundaries. And both the recognition and the dissolving of boundaries carries disillusionment, detachment, disappointment, frustration, suffering, right? These are all primary. They're not 5 stages of grief. They're all parts of a living, organizing biochemical process, right? So it gets very serious here. So that's Nietzsche's greatest weight. And where we go from here is redemption. So I mentioned man being a bridge and not a goal. And there's a reason why Zarathustra never shuts up about this concept. It's because he recognizes it in himself first and foremost, which is why he teaches by example. So this is, in case you're wondering, the meaning of life, chapter 42. And in case you're wondering what that is, because he's always going on about the rainbow bridges and the tones to the Superman, and tones are most easiest to deceive. But what he says earlier in the story is, because for man to be redeemed from revenge, that is for me the bridge to the highest hope and the rainbow after long storms, making visible new dimensionalities of being through one's own being, i.e. through one's language, through the expression of one's consciousness. So, and 42, by the way, is the angle at which a rainbow becomes visible in the visible spectrum. And from there, we could argue that a rainbow isn't even a bridge, it's actually a circle. It exists over the horizon, so we only see the bridge of it, which is to say about half of it, if that, right? But what it actually is, if you could spread it out on a long enough view, you would see that the rainbow is a giant circle. This is 42, redemption, and I want you to listen really closely what he says here. When Zarathustra one day went over the great bridge, right? So Nietzsche's saying, the Superman, I basically described myself, right? So one day he went over the great bridge. Then did the cripples and beggars surround him, and a hunchback spake thus unto him. Behold, Zarathustra, even the people learn from thee, and acquire faith in thy teaching. But for them to believe fully in thee, one thing is still needful. Thou must first convince us cripples, right? And he's talking about academics. He's talking about intellectuals. He's talking about great thinkers and people, right? Here hast thou now a fine selection, and verily an opportunity with more than one forelock. The blind can thou heal, and make the lame run. And from him who hath too much behind, couldst thou well also take away a little? That, I think, would be the right method to make the cripples believe in Zarathustra. So he's demanding a miracle, and he's saying, prove it. Prove you're the smartest motherfucker by fixing all those cripples and hunchbacks. And Zarathustra is going to get into why this is an impossibility, why this is a bad idea, and basically it tells you why past religious fantasies of like perfecting man, saying everyone has a soul that can be perfected, or that it already is perfect, so it doesn't matter that they're a miserable husk of a human being. He's going to basically completely eliminate that from one's consciousness, from his consciousness and others. So Zarathustra, however, answered thus unto him who spoke, the hunchback: when one taketh away the hump from the hunchback, then doth one take away from his spirit. So do the people teach. And one giveth the blind man eyes, then doth he see too many bad things on the earth, so that he curseth him who has healed him. And I would say this is the perennial liberal freak out. This is the larger mass movement of humanity. Too many people have woken up to too much bad news, and basically their idea is to generate more bad news to fight it. Now, no one actually thinks they're generating bad news. They're fighting for their side, for their tribe, for their politics, but that's just power at work, right? It's fully justified. It justifies itself. What I read yesterday in Zarathustra, in the Happy Isles, was him saying, yeah, it's only your own willpower that can emancipate you from the things that you think are burdening you in life that you can't handle. It's not going to be someone or something else. It can only be you. So there's so many layers to this. But what he's saying here is that if I make this dummy see, he's gonna freak out at what he sees, right? Not all words, not all truths are meant for all ears. There's a knowledge economy at work, and there's a reason why 20% of the knowledge and wisdom will be generated by 20% of the people, and the rest of the 80% just look at what's already been generated, right? So uh, he kind of goes on. They see too many bad things. Right? If you make the lame man run, inflicteth upon him the greatest injury, for hardly can he run when his vices run away with him, right? So you're giving him too much to chase after. He can't handle it. So do the people teach concerning cripples. And why should not Zarathustra also learn from the people? So he's saying again, and I've said this before, it works both ways. The strong learn from the weak, and the weak learn from the strong. With predator and prey relationships, it's no different. So he's learning from culture just as culture is learning from him. It is, however, the smallest thing unto me, since I have been amongst men, to see one person lacking an eye, another an ear, and a third a leg, and that others have lost the tongue or the nose or the head. So he's saying, these people are broken. They're fragments of human beings. They're lacking their capacities. I see and have seen worse things, and diverse things so hideous that I should neither like to speak of all matters, nor even keep silent about some of them, namely, men who lack everything, except that they have too much of one thing, men who are nothing more than a big eye, or a big mouth, or a big belly, or something else big. Reverse cripples, I call such men. And then I came out of my solitude, and for the first time passed over this bridge, right? So again, he's describing himself. He's saying this is the great bridge. He's also going to see something else profound and fated. And when I came out of my solitude and for the first time passed over this great bridge, right? He came down from the mountain, he came down to man. Then I could not trust mine eyes, but looked again and said at last, that is an ear as big as a man. I looked still more attentively, and actually there did move something under, and something was pitiably small and poor and slim. And in truth, this immense ear was perched on a small, thin stalk. The stalk, however, was a man. A person putting glasses to his eyes could even recognize further a small envious countenance, and also that a bloated solet dangled at the stalk. The people told me, however, that the big ear was not only a man, but a great man, a genius. But I never believed in the people when they spoke of great men, right? And I've said this before. Nietzsche was saying the little man and the great men, they both eternally return, and they're both eternally all too much the same. And I hold to my belief that it was a reverse cripple who had too little of everything and too much of one thing. When Zarathustra had spoken unto the hunchback, and unto those of whom the hunchback was the mouthpiece and advocate, then did he turn to his disciples in profound dejection, and said, Verily, my friends, I walk amongst men as amongst the fragments and limbs of human beings. This is the terrible thing to mine eye, that I find man broken up and scattered about as on a battlefield and butcher ground. And when mine eye fleeth from the present to the bygone, so he's saying, when I look from the present, what the men are like now, to the past, I findeth it ever the same. Fragments and limbs and fearful chances, but no men, right? He's saying no self-conscious, no self-willing, self-creating men. So many men caught up in the struggle, men who are willed or willed, but they only exist as slaves or masters within a preset and pre-fated power dynamic. In this case, there's a certain, maybe I'll find it and post it here, but there's a certain book cover to Zarathustra that shows him his shadow arriving at the Great Bridge, and you can see this kind of artistic depiction of these fragments of what is supposed to be a man. It looks like a rock-strewn field, but you recognize it's basically like a titan that's crumbled. Um, so that's what Zarathustra is saying. He comes to modern day men and finds that the gods are dead, that the titans are dead too, and then what remains are all these fragments. And then thanks to people's own pathology and mythology and stupefaction and kind of mystification of life, the general confusion of it, and that most people don't know much or in borderline illiterate, things like that, right? Even though they're kind of aware of their own position and fighting for their own survival therein, and have done so for all time, regardless of all cultures. He's saying at this point in time, this is how I find them. And when I look to the past, they were no different. They were very much the same. It was all fate and riddle and chance, right? They didn't actually know what they were doing. They didn't actually have a purpose. They were sussing out a purpose that eventually ran out. So, no men, the present and the bygone upon earth. Ah, my friends, that it is my most unbearable trouble, right? So do you hear that? The present and the bygone upon the earth. So back to the heaviest weight, right? It's not just the present, it's the past, because that is the future and it will return the same. People are ambered in time. No one goes from being an artist to a cop. And maybe there's a story of a cop who went to be an artist, but I bet in that story you would say he was an artist all along and his mistake was to become a cop, right? So back to the idea of mistakes in life, the idea that there is no theoretical other world, that there was a better life where someone made a better or different choice. It's just you and your reality, and can you handle that? So Zarathustra is honest about it, right? The present and the bygone upon earth. Ah, my friends, that is my most unbearable trouble, right? And back to the perennial liberal freakout. Why is history dead? Why is God dead? Why are the politics trying and the people in the world trying to move past all these concepts and beliefs, right? Ah, my friends, that is my most unbearable trouble, and I should not know how to live if I were not a seer of what is to come, right? He would just have no place in the present. He would just live in a timeless vacuum because he has no future to divine and no people to talk to, right? So he says, a seer, a purposer, a creator, a future itself, right? He's filling in the blanks. He's giving the purpose. He saw the past, he saw the present, he saw the future, and he took it into his own hands, right? There's no other bridge to redemption. There's no other road to redemption. And alas, also a seer, a purposer, a creator, a future itself, and a bridge to the future. And alas, also, as it were, a cripple on this bridge. All that is Zarathustra. Right, so this is him recognizing his limits. You can go this far, further than anyone else, but still no further. So imagine yourself being in that position. You see your position is faded in the cosmos. Where are you? What are you doing? Could you stand to do that over and over again? That past that brought you here, that made you, that was never going to be different anyway, and through psychoanalysis or otherwise? Because the whole idea would be that in psychoanalysis, you're only learning how to cope with the reality of your present, regardless of your past. Because lots of people survive the worst horrors, but their will to live carries them on, right? So that's been the lesson, right? It's the will that emancipates us, and that is a personal affair. Like the biggest error in human history was to believe that, and to teach the belief that someone could save someone else, right? And you see how that works in the powers that be's favor, right? That's always been the case. Trust us. And then if it's not you, how could you ever know what their intent is? And then we could just go on down the line, but you see from the initial and first question and protest, everything falls apart anyway. This is like, this is post-institutional philosophy 101. So if he couldn't see the future, he wouldn't know what to do with his time, who to speak to, how to spend it. But as it is, he's filling in the blanks. He's aiming an arrow here. A seer, a purposer, a creator, a future itself, and a bridge to the future. And alas, also it were a cripple on the bridge, all that is Zarathustra, right? So that's his own limitations and his own place and time, his own lack of fellowship, so on and so forth. And you also ask yourselves often, who is Zarathustra to us? What shall he be called by us? And like me, did ye give yourselves questions for answers? Is he a promiser or a fulfiller, a conqueror or an inheritor, a harvest or a plowshare, a physician or a healed one? Is he a poet or a genuine one, an emancipator or a subjugator, a good one or an evil one? He's all these things, because the human being is all these things. I walk amongst men as the fragments of the future, that future which I contemplate. And it is all my poetization and aspiration to compose and collect into unity what is fragment and riddle and fearful chance. And how could I endure to be a man if a man were not also the composer and riddle reader and redeemer of chance? Right, so he's seeing his relation there too. So one hand connected to the past, one hand connected to the future. He crosses the great bridge. He redeems himself. To redeem what is past, and to transform every it was into thus would I have it. That only do I call redemption. So let me repeat that again. To redeem what is past and to transform every it was into thus would I have it. That only do I call redemption. Right, total radical acceptance of the world as it is. No petty fighting against, no deluding yourselves as to think there could be some different past, therefore some different present, therefore some different future, right? Will, so is the emancipator and joy-bringer called. Thus have I taught you, my friends. But now learn this likewise. The will itself is still a prisoner. Right, so like I said, the mistakes, the pains, the problems, lots of people look back and you could argue that the whole like ego complexes and psychological orders and disorders are founded upon beliefs, relations, and feelings that are like basically imprinted as trauma from the past, right? So could you accept the past radically and not hope or even want to change it, or again to even talk about it, because eventually one has to get over it. So, right, to get over it, to bridge over it. Will, so is the emancipator and joy-bringer called. Thus have I taught you, willing emancipateth. But what is it called which still putteth the emancipator in chains? It was, right? It was the past, whether it was someone else's will or your own will. But it was. Thus is the will's teeth gnashing and lonesomest tribulation called. Impotent towards what hath been done, right? Every slight, every pain, every insult, every kick in the ribs, every kick while you're down, every, we're going to milk you dry and then, suck the marrow out of your bones. For every person in the world who has been treated that way, right? It was. Thus is the will's teeth gnashing and lonesomest tribulation called. Impotent towards what hath been done, right? And if you can't if you can't actually vindicate and strike back in the moment, then you're left with revenge. And revenge has always been the slave's morality and the slave's mode of being, right? Because through that comes sharpening, comes intelligence, comes learning how to fight, right? It's strength and intelligence evolve from that. So it is a malicious spectator of all that is past, right? The position of the present is a malicious spectator of the past. Not backwards can the will, that it cannot break time and time's desire, right? Even realizing, oh, we made a mistake. Oh, what I wanted didn't make me happy. Wasn't that a waste of time? No, hopefully you learned something. If not, I suppose it was a waste of time. But then are you okay with that? So not backwards can the will, that it cannot break time and time's desire. That is the will's lonesomest tribulation. Willing emancipateth. What doth willing itself devise in order to get free from its tribulation and mock at its prison? Ah, a fool becometh every prisoner. Foolishly deriveth itself also the imprisoned will. Foolishly delivereth itself also the imprisoned will. That time doth not run backwards. That is its animosity, right? That it can't change time. That there's no changing time. If you really wanted to change the future, you'd have to change the present. You'd have to change the past. So, right, that is its animosity. That which was, so is the stone that which cannot so is the stone which it cannot roll called, right? Yes, there's no rolling that stone, but all of history is people attempting. And thus doth it roll stones out of animosity and ill humor, and taketh revenge on whatever doth not like itself feel rage and ill humor, right? This is resentment. This is a bad attitude. Thus did the will, the emancipator, become a torturer, and all that is capable of suffering, it taketh revenge, because it cannot go backwards, right? So, okay, I'm thinking of American success guru Zig Ziglar, he says it's a cat-kicking world, right? Man gets a speeding ticket, goes to his office, yells at the secretary yells at the coworker yells at the kid goes and kicks the cat, right? It's very much a cat-kicking world. This alone is revenge itself, the will's antipathy to time, and it was, right? So that the will is hostile and that time is seen as its enemy, essentially, right? When all of life is circular time. If time is your enemy, you just become the world's enemy. The world becomes your torture chamber, and then you inflict it outward, right? This isn't speculative psychology. He's saying this is history, and that all of history has been made up of these like resentful fragments along with these great fragments, right? So verily, a great folly dwelleth in our will, and it becometh a curse unto all humanity, that this folly acquired spirit. Spirit is life cutting into life. So he's saying that the foolish and the hateful acquired spirit and then would wield this as a religion and as a social tool and as all these other forces, right? Spirit is the thing which creates and emancipateth and does all these other things too as well, right? The spirit of revenge, my friends, that hath hitherto been man's best contemplation. And where there was suffering, it was claimed there was also penalty. So this is what he wants deliverance from. And it's in the Tarantulas 29 where he spells this out again. He forecasts it, right? Because he's looking to the future. He's seeing his own great bridge. He's telling his story in mythopoetic fashion. And what he says earlier in the story is, because for man to be redeemed from revenge, that is for me the bridge to the highest hope and the rainbow after long storms. Right? That's the rainbow bridge to the Superman, right? We'd have to get rid of all this bad junk. We'd have to get rid of all the useless thought, all the bad experiences, all the bad memories, all the suffering. But arguably, so many forces alive and at work in the world are the vital forces of these resentments and these curses at work. So we're stuck here with this spirit. It's been here all along. And he wants man to be redeemed from it, because only by freeing the physiology of just old ghosts and goblins, dead, the walking dead, and or the dead voices of the past and the living dead of the present, right? Because if they're not speaking to your soul, they're not your people. You have no business with them. So who cares if they wish revenge and violence upon the world and upon man, even for eternity, right? Revenge, violence, control, change. You need to change, right? Because like I said, with how people are treated and disposed of and chewed up and spit out in this world, right? You see how the revengeful feelings are fostered. So it's completely understandable. Now that's everyone's justification. That's everyone's excuse, right? So as my father would kind of say, when everyone cheats, there is no game, right? So the idea that culture is a game, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's a deadly game of survival. Um, so that spirit of revenge, right, the one he wants to be delivered from, my friends, that has hitherto been man's best contemplation. And where there was suffering, it was claimed there was also penalty. Penalty, so calleth itself revenge. With a lying word, it feigneth a good conscience, right? Like, so the punishment is justified. The morality is justified. Because in the willer himself there is suffering, because he cannot will backwards, right, to stand up for himself in the moment or stop the act to begin with. Thus was willing itself, and all life claimed to be penalty. So he's saying we've had it backwards all along. All this teaching of good and evil, all this teaching of morality, it's been a cover for power. It's been a cover for revenge and control. And then did cloud after cloud roll over the spirit, until at last madness preached. Everything perisheth. Therefore, everything deserves to perish, right? So because someone or something died, it deserved it. No, people and things just kind of are what they are. No one deserves anything. And itself is justice, the law of time, that he must devour his children, right? Kronos devours his children. And if you remember the story of the gods were the story of stasis. They overthrew their own reality, their own madness, which was then the sons of the Titans ate the Titans, or chained them up at least. Therefore, the gods came to rule. So as a proxy for their own power structure, or as a mythology of their own power structure, you see that then no different than what Christianity kind of adopts. Once you kind of put the world in stasis, you have to start devouring your children. Otherwise, Father Time will devour you, and you have to accept that. So the model of the present has been this revenge of parents devouring their children all along. So he's talking about how people have justified this all along. Everything perishes, therefore it deserves it. This itself is justice, the law of time, time itself, linear time is justice, right? That it must devour his children, madness preached. Morally are things ordered according to justice and penalty. Oh, where is there deliverance from the flux of things and from the existence of penalty? Thus did madness preach, right? This is Buddhistic, this is Christian, this is Platonic, even thinking of somewhere there's a pure realm of pure form or pure being, that somewhere there's just an alternate reality, right? An existence without penalty, or one that is solely beauty, therefore acceptable to life and not painful, right? But thus did madness preach. Can there be deliverance when there is eternal justice? Alas, unrollable is the stone. There is no escape, right? It was. Eternal must also be all penalties. Thus did madness preach, right? We've given up. There's no hope. We've settled on our answers. There's no escaping this. There's no escaping it was. Therefore, eternal must be the law. Taxis and nomos, arrangement, law, and order, right? It must be eternal. Therefore, the law, the order, and its penalties and punishments are eternal. And Nietzsche is saying, no, this is madness. By Zarathustra's definition, the 8 billion people who live in this world are madness incarnate. So, no deed can be annihilated. How could it be undone by penalty? This is the this is what is eternal in the existence of penalty. That existence also must be eternally recurring deed and guilt, right? That the same things will happen over and over again. The same ideas, the same people, the same personality types, the same struggle for power. Unless the will, right, capital will, should at last deliver itself and willing become non-willing. But ye know, my brethren, the fabulous song of madness, right? That's, again, back to Buddhism, the idea of, okay, now you're just, sure, you might have a vital, strong spiritual will, but now you've just turned it to nothing. You've turned it to non-existent existence, and while meanwhile letting the worst and dumbest people vie for power, which is arguably everything on the market. It's the lowest common denominators, the lowest rent application of any human knowledge or wisdom. So it's all been this fabulous song of madness. He goes, away from all the fabulous songs that I lead you when I taught you, the will is a creator, right? Don't be a consumer. Create, but don't consume the shit these people are selling, man. I'm warning you. All it was is a fragment, a riddle, a fearful chance. So he's saying all of the past is a fragment, a riddle, a fearful chance, until the creating will saith thereto, but thus would I have it, right? And this is Emersonian. I care not for the history unless it's a cheerful apologue to my being and becoming. Why should I be saddled with whoever whoever anyone says is the worst and the best? Why should anyone born now be saddled with whatever bullshit legacy and fantasy that was anyway? You know, so moving on, he's saying, no, enough with these riddles and these fateful chances. Thus would I have it, until the creating will said thereto, but thus do I will it, thus shall I will it. But did it ever speak thus? And when doth this take place? Hath the will been unharnessed from its own folly? Hath the will become its own deliverer and joy bringer? Hath it unlearned the spirit of revenge and all teeth gnashing, right? Or is it still fueled by its relation of against? Is it still defined and driven by, or does it put forth its own self-created, self-generated values? Is it? It's classic, just capitalizing on necessity and destitution and pure need and hatred and all other unbridled emotions therein that seek a way out. On one hand, right, that is the spirit of revenge, and it's fully dependent upon others. And maybe that's what its greatest revenge is, or its greatest pain is its dependence, is where it's stuck in time. And who had taught it reconciliation with time and something higher than all reconciliation, right? So he doesn't just stop there. Something higher than all reconciliation must the will, which is the will to power. But how doth that take place? Who had taught it also to will backwards? Right, so he's saying to affirm the past is to affirm the present, which is to affirm the future. So he's calling that willing backwards, reaching backwards to say yes. In the moment saying yes, reaching forward to say yes. All right, We got a happy camper. We got a good attitude for once. For once, it's not revenge and teeth gnashing and threatening you with hell and talking about how you're unconscious and you're poorly conscious and you're stupidly conscious and we're going to fix you and we're going to beat you and eventually some fabled fated tomorrow you're going to have your delivery and someone else is going to save you even, or a God's going to save you. No, that just maybe in some other universe, some other timeline, that means something to someone, but in the real world and in the future, Nietzsche sees it for what it is. It's only ever this moment, and people are either okay with that or they're not. Right? So the heaviest weight is posing the question, are you okay with yourself? Could you handle yourself for all eternity? Are you okay with things as they are? You can't change anything. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with yourself? And then it seems to me most people's answer is no. That's why they struggle. That's why life is defined, why politics has been defined, why everything is defined as struggle. Who taught it also to will backwards. But at this point in his discourse, it chanced that Zarathustra suddenly paused and looked like a person in the greatest alarm. Uh-oh, he had a moment of lucidity, like some reality caught up to him. He's becoming disillusioned in the moment even. With terror in his eyes did he gaze on his disciple, his glances pierced as with arrows their thoughts and arrear thoughts. But after a brief space he again laughed and said soothedly, it is difficult to live amongst men because silence is so difficult, especially for a babbler. Thus spake Zarathustra. The hunchback, however, had listened to the conversation and had covered his face during the time. But when he heard Zarathustra laugh, he looked up with curiosity and said slowly, "But why does Zarathustra speak otherwise unto us than unto his disciples?" Zarathustra answered, "What is there to be wondered at? With hunchbacks one may well speak in a hunchback way." Right? Another way of saying it is you just meet people where they're at. You don't force differences of power differentials on them. That's stupid. That's tyrant territory. That's infants do that, right? Infants feel the urge to hit where they can't otherwise communicate, right? Um, so very good, said the hunchback. And with pupils one may well tell tales out of school. But why does Zarathustra speak otherwise unto his pupils than unto himself? And honestly, that's because, again, not all things are meant for all ears. So he relays what he can. He gives his teachings as best he can formulate them for other people to learn them. And at the end of the day, he knows there's going to be different things to say and communicate to different people, and also different things reserved solely for himself. Maybe he can express them through sublimation, or maybe there are things for everything he did put down into words, there was a lot he didn't select for, right? Something that's easy to forget about with artists and what they do create is everything that they intentionally leave out. So that's exactly what the hunchback is questioning him on. So again, we see to Nietzsche, none of this is not like the spirit, the matters of the spirit, human spirituality to Nietzsche. It's not religious. It's not institutional. He sees it as personal. So what that means is no one else can save another. No institution can save or preserve another. It's wholly on the self and the individual will. It's why he says men of the future will be measured by their strength of the amount of truth they can take, which is therefore the strength of their will. The idea that a weak will is willed, and a strong will seeks its own and generates its own and desires its own, right? And there are vast gulfs and divides in this. More specifically, what he's saying, he's recognizing that the very teaching of morality and religion has been a permanent and perpetual shackling and a destruction of goodwill and the generation of resentment and bad spirit and bad attitudes, right? To eventually engulf the masses, right? And to spread the madness. So he sees that's the part of the heaviest weight. That's what it is, and there's no changing the past. And that to accept that, you'd have to affirm the past as well as the present, thus the future. And then you can only do that by becoming a bridge yourself, because there's no reaching beyond where one is. Like there's an old idea that amongst people who know, you can see who knows what. And that's how a lot of this is knowing who to avoid. Amongst doctors, shamans, healers, it's knowing you pick patients and those who can actually have the capacity to recover. Sometimes people are just terminal cases and there's no changing that. But for Nietzsche, it's all real. It all exists in this world. There's no metaphysical world. There's no other world. You're literally overcoming yourself and other people. You're overcoming the bad will of the past, the bad resentment of the past, the bad memories of the past, to be okay with the present moment. And he sees that. He sees the harnessing of one's own will and overcoming all these limitations and barriers as the sole and real redemption. And this he calls the rainbow bridge to the Superman, right? So these variegated tones that can demonstrate and show by way of their varied feeling capacity and dimensionality that here is a man delivered. Here is a different man singing a different song that is wholly, like, you cannot mistake this for the superfluous. You can't mistake this for any politics or anything that comes out of academia. And that's exactly where this guy comes from. Politics and academia, the son of a preacher and a member of his culture and a gentleman, right? But he sees that the whole thing is warfare and resentment and struggle that's been bound up, and that year after year, century after century, the pain and the resentment and the desire for freedom thereby and therefrom was going to eventually blow up. And now it's fully engulfed the planet by way of its own spirited blowing up. And again, Nietzsche says, away from the preachers, away from the politics, away from the state, away from the masses, away from the believers, away from the ideologies, away from all of what was formerly established and known, because once you get over that, that's no longer your bridge or your crutch, right? That was just a means to see the present and therefore the future, and a means to create within the real framework of reality. And again, not some spiritual backworld, not some second coming or other revelation where some spiritual teacher was going to come and tell you what you need to know, or they were going to find it and that's good enough. No, it doesn't matter that anyone else knows or does anything. It only matters for the individual that they know or do anything, right? So it gets real serious real fast, because all of culture exists as the stasis and safety net that kind of says, hey, if you don't have the means of going it alone or figuring this out for yourself, you can put yourself in other people's hands, but it's a big risk and it's a big gamble. And you see that people cheat each other and feed off each other all the time. And they hide behind goodwill, and they hide behind morality, and they hide behind good conscience, and everything that madness has preached from the past to this present date. But again, Nietzsche gets away from it all. He attacks and destroys all old values in his evaluation and creates new ones in their stead by saying, not like anything else in life, you slap the kid's hand away, not that, this. And then they start reaching over here, and then you say, not that, this. And eventually the kid learns to, somewhere between the slapping away of their own hand and them learning how to guide their own hand themselves, somehow taste is developed. And this is where I would point out, at the end of the day, we all have our confessions, because we're all benefactors or victims of our own taste. So you just listen to what people are saying, and you can hear what they're selling. They'll tell you what they're selling and why. They'll tell you the power dynamics they're involved in and why. They'll tell you who's paying their paycheck too, right? You can hear what people mean by what they say, and they mean that for a reason. It's not unconscious. It's not an accident. As things were willed, so they are willed today, right? And the only difference are those who are actually okay with it, those who have come to terms with it, those who have become their own bridge, those who, in old psychoanalytic terms, have kind of come to individuate in their own way. They become, just like a tree will grow to its maximal height, cracking through all rocks and barriers necessary. A vital human being is no different. So even Zarathustra, though, he builds his bridge, he crosses his bridge, and he sees exactly his limitations. So once that tree stretches out, once it uses up all the nutrients, once it's down to, now it's only minimal growth over long periods of time, right? It's a different sort of process taking place than when it was a sapling. But everything of the past was repeated to bring it to the present. And again, for Nietzsche, I can't hit this home enough, is that the religious, the spiritual, it's not related and stuck in institution. It's not owned by something else. It's not delegated by someone else. It's literally freeing oneself from all the revenge and punishments of the past, therefore the present, therefore the future. I think Terence McKenna had it like, everyone should be so fortunate as to live in their own private heaven, like their own kind of unconcerned space adjacent to reality. Assuming they're actually dealing with people in reality and talking to people there, you can assume it's perfectly sane, but you get what he's saying, right? He's saying, to not be caught up in the world's fervor and fury and frustration and sorrows, because how arrogant anyway to think that anyone and everyone can take on all this and carry it on their shoulders when they don't even have answers to their own lives, let alone the world's problems and the world's lives. Yet you see that this is the struggle, this is the fight, this is the power at work. Nietzsche says, no, deliverance, redemption. The answer to life, turns out, is 42. It's related to the spiritual and the physical, but at the end of the day, Nietzsche's redemption is from man himself. It's from man's bad will, man's bad spirit, man's meanness, man's cruelty, man's stupidity. And I'm including woman in this, by the way. Woman, when I say man, I'm meaning woman too. It's and just mistakes and errors and everything else that I've been discussing, right? He says, no, be free of that. Be fruitful and multiply. This has been Thus Spake Zarathustra, chapter 42, Redemption. Thanks for checking out the channel. Again, welcome or welcome back. And if we're both so fortunate as to be here for the next one, I will hopefully see you then. Take care. Bye.